Hello folks, I hope that you are having just a great day today. Today I take a look at the fantasy novel The Sword of Bheleu by Lawrence Watt Evans. It's the third book in the four-book Lords of Dus series that I've been reviewing for you, taking a deep dive into with it for you. This series was very influential on me. It was one of the first adult series that I read as a kid. It's very impactful on me. I mentioned it in my appendix N of the most influential books in the series. In particular, the second book, The Seven Altars of Dusara, is particularly my favorite and one of my most impactful fantasy novels that I've ever read. For me, I just still love it to this death. And so I've gone back and reread the series a few times now. And this is probably the fifth or sixth time I've read the series. It's been more than 10 years since I read it. And one of the things I've been doing for you recently is I've been rereading some of the classics that I read from when I was a kid, and then if they are good enough, I've been letting you know about them. Sometimes, you know, the youth, your loves of the youth don't stand the test of time when you come back to them as an adult. And sometimes you really do, and so when they do, I've been bringing it back to your attention. I did this with my with my current reviews I'm doing for you for Fred Saberhagen. I'm also doing this with Lawrence Watt Evans, who was I was a big fan of, and I have more than 20 books by Lawrence Watt Evans. I've done a few reviews by him. He is a Hugo Award-winning author. I've done his Hugo short story that he won, Why I Left Harry's All-Night Hamburgers, which is a short story about other worlds and parallel worlds. And parallel world theory is pretty good. I like it a lot, and I've reviewed that for you. It's won a Hugo Award. So he is a Hugo Award-winning author, although here he's writing fantasy. The first novel that he ever wrote is the first book in this series, The War of the Basilisk. It feels very much like a prelude to the series. It's not tight. It's not a key part of what's going on. It doesn't drive the story forward in any major ways. It's just a prelude. The next three books in the series are a much more tighter book of series. And while the Lord of Dus series is a series of 4 books, it really feels more like a prelude and a trilogy than it does an actual proper, book with a 4-book of series. So this is the penultimate book in the series, the middle book of the trilogy, if you will. And there's definitely a lot of things that are happening that are key parts of driving the story forward. And I like it a lot. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It's actually my second least favorite book in the series, but I still like the series a lot, so it's in a 7 out of 10. Pretty good. I gave a 6 out of 10 to the first book. I gave a 9 out of 10 to the second book. I'm giving an 7 out of 10 to the third book, rather, and 9 out of 10 for the second book. So 6, 9, and then 7. And what will the last book be? I know, although I'm going to go back and reread it. I just finished this book last night. I spent about 3 hours over the last couple of days knocking this novel out. I really do like it a lot, and so I cleaned it up pretty quickly. It's only about a 4.5 5 hour read total. It doesn't take you that long to read. I mean, if you look at it, it's only 270 pages long, which is pretty light for a modern novel. You can read it a day if you really want to dedicate yourself to it. If you did an hour a day, you do it less than a week. So it's a pretty quick clip. Lawrence Watt Evans unfortunately does suffer from some sequelitis. His later sequels can be longer than the first two. The first 2 books are both like 220. The next book's 270. And then the last book's like clipping and right around 300 pages. The Book of Silence, which I'll start tonight after I've done my review for you. But let's go ahead and get started with the story. What's happening in the Sword of Bheleu? And spoilers here for what happened in the previous book, and I'll give you about 2 or 3 seconds for you to say, spoilers. I'm going to go ahead and stop now because the second book is so good. But what wound up happening at the end of the second book and concludes is that Garth has finished grabbing the things from the various altars that he found, and he's about to bring them back to the Forgotten King, the King in Yellow, the lost King of Carcosa, which is a reference, by the way, to Robert W. Chambers, and by Lawrence Watt Evans. It's a big reference to Robert W. Chambers' The Yellow Sign and the King in Yellow. But what wound up happening is he brings it back, and then we'll open up with, and then we finish the second book with him leaving Dusara behind. And we'll pick up on the journey back to Dusara, just outside of the Skeleth, where the Forgotten King is, and sort of the home base, if you will. of the Overman Garth. I'll actually pick up the first chapter. Let's pick it up with Galt, who is the primary trader of the Overmen. As a reminder, Garth is an Overman. These are sorcererly created race about 1,000 years ago, or so roughly from this time. They are larger than humans. They're furry. They have no nose. They have an extra. Their pinky is an extra thumb. So they have massively powerful forms of manual dexterity. They have their own tools, like their own swords that are designed for them, and that sort of thing. So it's pretty cool what's happening with them as a race. They're pretty powerful. They were driven out of the human territory during the racial wars that ended about 300 years ago. And they're now living in the Northern Wastes. Although, while he was robbing the altars of Dusar in the second novel, he actually came across Overmen that were in Dusar that actually come from the place called the Yperian Coast. So he's like, the Northern Wastes Overmen thought that those people were just raiders and barbarians out that way. So they didn't know that any Overmen were over that way too. So now Garth is coming back with that knowledge too, that Overmen are living other places than just the Northern Wastes. And what he's wanting to do at the end of book 1 is he wants to set up a trading shop between his hometown and the capital of the Northern Wastes by the Overmen, or Dunham, and the former enemy, the human outpost of Skeloth. And so it comes in book of 1. I'm sorry, beginning of book 2, the trading envoy. The Baron insults him, forces him to agree to when he returns home to Ordunnan to present to them the surrendering of himself and becoming a fief under the Baron proper, which he agrees to do because he doesn't want to disrupt trade, because this is the only way he thinks that his people are going to be able to stop starving. Right now they have a monopoly by some raiders that raid down the sea, and they're being charged way too much because they know it. So they need to be able to trade to other people, and he knows that his people are, even though they have gold, they've got furs, they've got all these great things, he knows that his people are starving. And starvation is a real issue with his people living up in the Northern Wastes, because they just aren't able to trade for as much food. So he knows that his people need this trade with Skeloth to survive. So he accepts the humbling from the Baron, but then he says, I'm just not going to go back to Ordunnan. So he takes a quest for the Forgotten King. So now he's coming back with the idea of opening up trade not only with Skeloth, but also with the Ordunnans. Him and the master trader Galt will send an expedition over to Ordunnan. We don't know what's going to happen over to the Yperian Coast in order to include the possibility of trade between Skeloth and the Overmen of the Northern Wastes. And so there's another possibility over there for trade with the Overmen that are out that way, as well as developing the trade now that he's returned. What he wants to do is he's brought back this Sword of Bheleu from the Temple of Bheleu, which I might be mispronouncing. It's fine. You can see how it's spelled, Bheleu. Who knows how that's actually supposed to be pronounced? I'm pronouncing it Bheleu, but it could be Plelu, or I don't know. It's a fantasy word. We'll just live with it. But anyway, he had brought that back. It had caused him to go crazy. He killed all the cult of Bheleu. He shouted, "I am Bheleu" a few times. We find out that he's actually a guy that was in some rumors and some prophecies, that he is the prophesized one that is coming to sow chaos and destruction in the second book. And now in the third book, we're going to open up with him bringing the sword back. And he, a few times while he's bringing the sword back, as part of the things that he brought back from the first of all from the various temples, as a part of his quest for the Forgotten King. This one has taken him over a few times, and one of the women that he's bringing back too, because there was a woman on one of the altars that was about to be sacrificed, so he captured her and he's bringing her back to the Forgotten King. He has been on his ways. She'll tell him whenever it gets too red, and he'll be able to like shut it down with his mind before he gets too crazy and goes off too cocked into the wind. And so that's kind of happening. He winds up back up in Skeloth right around chapter 3, and he has. He meets with the Baron in the public square with a number of overmen that have marched down from the north because he didn't come back, and they think that he may have captured Garth, and they want him to release Garth, and they also want to renegotiate the terms, as the terms that had been negotiated by Galt, the master trainer, aren't able for them to make any money, so they also want to renegotiate those terms. And Garth wants him to forswear and his alliance I'm sorry, rather his pledge that he has sworn to, that no overman will break their word. It's never happened in the 1,000 years that they've been around, so he wants the Baron to release him from his pledge so that he can go back home. So the idea is that they're negotiating from a position of strength with about 60 overmen that they brought down, whereas the first trader envoy was just 4 people into the entire town of Skella. So by bringing down more overmen, the idea is that they're negotiating from a position of strength. Garth meets with the Baron insults him a few times and says that there's no chance that he is going to reduce the thing from, and he just leaves and walks back into his mansion. The sword, and angered already by this, and he's a guy who's already prone to anger. Garth throws, is incensed by Bheleu, the god of destruction. He throws his sword at the Baron and kills him, stabs him right in the back, and kills him dead. And as he dies, the Baron shouts out, "Fool," to him, and that's the end of chapter 3. Now, what's going to happen? There's a whole book. So I'll go ahead and leave you to it. But it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun things happen, and it's probably the least fun book. It's the most serious book of the 4, I suppose, in a few ways, as the Age of Destruction begins upon the world, and Bheleu's age is beginning. But a lot of fun things are happening in the story. It's a tightly wound novel. I give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's well done. I do think that it's probably about 20-30 pages too long. I don't think that Lawrence Wood Evans needed to give it that extra 30 pages. I think it would have been a tighter 220 novel. I kept it the same length as the first 2 novels that were very much more tightly wound. So I think that's to its discredit. I don't think it needs it. It does do some world building and a deep dive into the antagonists of Garth, which is fine. You're going to have a lot of point of view characters that are not Garth. The Master Trader Galt will have a chapter or 2. And he'll have 1 chapter, the first chapter, and the parts of other chapters. And then you'll have some others here and there that are taken over as point of view characters. I don't know that much of detail was needed. I think that some of the descriptions. I think that the middle of the book will have some pace issues. And so I only give it a 7 out of 10 rather than a higher number. Whereas the previous book, The Swords of Dus, was a cracking novel at 9 out of 10. And there's never any issues with pacing or anything else like that. It's keeping up with stuff very, very quickly. There's a lot of fun things that are happening. But there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read the series or anything by Lawrence Wood Evans? Have you read The Sword of Bheleu? What did you think of it? Did you like it or dislike it? I would be more than happy to engage with it further in the comments below. If you like this video, why not hit that subscribe button? Because there's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, hey, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and investing in and watching my videos. We all have so many things that are happening in our videos and happening in our lives, right? And we're being pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.